417. That's how many days Yona Brief fought for his life after being shot 13 times on October 7th while trying to save his fallen friends in Kfar Aza. 417 days that his parents never left his side. 417 days that transformed a hospital room into a place of hope filled with music, laughter, and an unshakable will to live. 417 blood donation units collected in his memory on what would have been his 24th birthday. Yona was defined as the most severely wounded soldier of the Iron Swords War. Yet in room 11 of Sheba Medical Center, which the staff still calls Yona's room, this 23-year-old combat medic with an infectious smile and boundless Simchat Chaim, joy of life, taught everyone around him what it means to choose life even when everything is collapsing. The doctors say they changed their protocols because of him and saved other soldiers because of what his battle taught them. Today, his parents, David and Hazel Brief, share the story of their son, a fighter, a peacemaker, and a young man whose legacy teaches us all what it means to truly live. This is Defining Moments with Rabbi David Fine. Welcome to the Defining Moments podcast. I'm Rabbi David Fine, and we are here in Modi'in, Israel, in the DABRU studios. And today, my guests are Hazel and David Brief. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we're here to talk about their son, who was very badly injured. In fact, I think he was the most injured soldier until he passed away last November 26, 2024. But we're here to talk about him, to speak about memories, and to speak about, what I think Yona can teach us for our own lives today. That's really, I think, my goal, because he was such an amazing hero that I think that even though physically he's no longer with us, I think that he has so much to teach us, really, really so much. But before I start, I wanted to say that while we're here to talk about Yona, that I say we should do someday a podcast about David and Hazel Brief, because you both are an inspiration to all of us. I'm choking up. And the dedication to your family, to Yona, to your other children, to Am Yisrael, and to all the right things in life, you really are an inspiration to both of us. You're quiet, you're humble, but you are an inspiration to all of us. And I don't think I've ever spoken before on behalf of the Jewish people, but I'm gonna be brave here and say that on behalf of the Jewish people, that we thank you and we're with you and we continue to hug you. So before we get started, I just wanted to say right at the outset, and then we'll get back to the beginning, that part of the reason we're doing this now is because Yona Brief, Hashem Yikom Damo, I should have said, his Yortzeit, as I said, is next week on Chaf Hey Cheshvan, and the family invites the public to first an evening, Erev Zikaron V'Shira L'Zichro, evening of memories and singing at 8:00 p.m. this coming Saturday night, the 15th of November, at Yeshivat Lapid, where he attended school in Modi'in. And then the next morning, the Aliyah LaKever, Umilim L'Zichro, going to the site of the grave at Har Herzl on Sunday at 3:30 p.m. And it's Har Herzl Chelka 18. And I also just wanted to say something, and again, we'll get back to the beginning, but tomorrow, I understand that there's going to be a dedication of a very special simulator at Sheba Hospital, where Yona spent 417 days, if I'm correct, before he passed away. So Hazel, could you tell us a little bit about that?
So the simulator is really a way of sharing a bit of Yona with everybody. During Yona's hospitalization, because of the difficulties of his wounds that he incurred, the hospital really learned a lot about medicine from Yona. Yona, very early on in his hospitalization, was not written in any medical book. And at one point, I called Chili Trooper, and I said, I'm a little bit worried that the doctors don't know what they're doing. And he said, wait. Let me just call Professor Kreis, who's the head of the hospital. Let me see. Hang on. So he calls back 10 minutes later, and he said, you're right. I said, what do you mean I'm right? He says, well, they don't know what they're doing. And I said, well, what does that mean? He said, well, Yona is just a medical miracle that nobody can explain how he is surviving. With the medical statistics that he has, it's just a miracle. And through Yona's fight and his desire to live and to live a good life, the hospital learned a lot and began to change protocols about patients who bleed. There was, shortly after he passed away, there was a tekis.
Ceremony?
Ceremony.
I know, we all do
not
that.
Not a tekis, sorry, it's not a ceremony. It's a
conference.
There was a conference about, yes, it was an international conference at Sheba about bleeding disorders, and they dedicated it to Yona because through Yona they learned to change quite a variety of protocols at the hospital, which has gone on to save countless numbers of soldiers that have been injured. So the simulator, what this simulator was is Sheba really wanted to do something. The team at the ICU felt incredibly attached to Yona and to us and us to them. And so they decided to fundraise for a simulator which simulates life and death situations and all sorts of things that they medically learned about Yona, and they wanted to enrich the other teams in the hospital. So they created what's known as Team Yona. And Team Yona will go throughout the hospital and teach on this very, very advanced computerized simulator.
So it's another way, like I said at the beginning, that we could still gain from Yona even after his life has been taken in such an evil way. I want to go to left field here for a second before I really start, because I was thinking about it in the car on the way over. And I said this to you when we met downstairs, that I don't think I saw you since the Shiva. So I was thinking about it. I think maybe I spoke to you for like a second at the Shiva because there were so many people and so many celebrities and all that. And I often think, and it's often a discussion, well, do they really want us there? A lot of people say, well, we're going, we're at the end of the day, they're going for themselves and not necessarily for you. So what should people do? Did you out of the person, you know me, but we know each other, right? But there are some people that you don't know that come. In Israel, so many people go to the Shivas, to the funerals. That's not usual in America. Americans, when they come here, are unfamiliar with that. But how did you feel, when people came?
I think it's overwhelming.
Right.
On the other hand, you're in a state of shock. And it is very heartwarming to have people come and say, I don't know you, I don't know anybody in your family, but I followed Yona's story. I'm not even religious, and I decided to say Tehillim, and I don't speak Hebrew. I said them in English, and I just wanted to just come and and be with you. And I think it's very heartwarming. I think it's a very Israeli thing to do, actually, and I think unfortunately we have to do this a lot, but that big, I think, enormous hug that you get from the country when there's a fallen soldier. I think I would like to say that Shiva is 1 week, and then you have the Shloshim, and then you need to get on with your life.
Right.
And what I would encourage, if I can say that, is encourage people to show up. There's so many bereaved families. Right. We have over 900 soldiers killed. We have also Nova. And after the Shiva, they tend to show up at Yom HaZikaron on Memorial Day, maybe at the Azkara, the memorial at the cemetery. But there's a lot of days in between that many, many families sit home. Right. And they need that hug then.
So people should just show up and knock on the door,
or just leave something.
Right.
So I tell people, what, or text. Right. We have a wonderful way. You don't have to speak to anybody. Right. Is it okay? And I really encourage people to show up for all of these families. It is it's very easy to show up when there's something very public.
Right.
But there's so much time in between all the public things, and the public things really aren't for us.
Right.
We don't need Israel Memorial Day because every moment of every day is we remember Yona.
Right. I'm sure.
So we understand it's very important for other people.
Right. David, during Shiva?
Yeah, no, there were a lot of people. It was very overwhelming, but it was nice to see people. I mean, we saw people from all portions of our life that just kind of showed up, and it was heartwarming to see them, but at the same time it was difficult because there were people I wanted to talk to, and then I couldn't really speak to everybody because there were
so
everybody
people,
came at once, but then afterwards there were a lot of down times where it was very quiet, and especially being in the house without Yona is very quiet. Yona is our youngest. So he was alone with us after the other kids all got married and left the house. So for the last 2 years, he was watching out for us at all times.
I'm sure you. Oh, sorry. Go on.
Yeah, no. So that so it was so we really we came back to an empty nest, so to speak. And then during the Shiva, it was filled with people, and that was nice. And there were actually 7 of us sitting Shiva at the same time. It was everybody took a different corner, and we saw so many people, and a lot of people that we didn't know that just felt part of the story, because it became a very public story, and we asked a lot of people to daven, and during the time, saying Tehillim, doing hafrashat challah, doing mitzvot, all kinds of different activities that we requested people to do, or other people requested, and it was just heartwarming to see the response of everybody, and we think that was part of the strength that we had, that gave us strength and gave Yona strength to and his will to survive, because we went through a lot of difficult ups and downs in the hospital.
I think that's putting it pretty lightly.
Yeah.
I think that when you say when you talked about Yona's place in the family, you said Yona is our youngest, so I assume that was done used intentionally, right? And I mean, he's still with us. He may not be here physically or for you, but I think that you can't go, 2 steps without seeing his sticker, without hearing about him, and
We are always and will always be Yona's parents.
Right.
Nothing has changed.
Right. Beautiful. I think that what you said, Hazel, is in my other life, when I'm not a podcaster, I'm a rabbi and I train rabbis. And I learned this from a rabbi colleague of mine in the United States many years ago, that when somebody passed away, even if not under tragic circumstances, I would write in my calendar 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. So that call this person just to check in how they're doing, right?
Beautiful.
And I mean, just to get a call from your rabbi or somebody else, like you're saying, it takes so little to just make someone else feel better.
Exactly.
So I want to.
I think that's really good, just to use the phone and call.
Right.
People don't do that these days.
We get a lot of thinking about you.
Right.
Which is very nice.
Right.
And
I'm also
thinking about me.
I'm also writing a book. It's called How WhatsApp is Destroying Our World. I'm being serious. People laugh about that. But you know what? Right. The people that used to call me on my birthday and I used to have a 10-minute conversation with, now you get a little emoji, right?
Yeah. Right. My father was also a congregational rabbi.
I think I know that.
For many years.
Where?
In Skokie, Illinois.
Right.
And he had no qualms he knew how to use the phone.
Right.
He would call people out of the blue. If they answer, they answer. If they don't answer, he leaves a message. And he connected with a lot of people. And I remember on his birthday, many people would just give him a call, not an emoji.
Right. No, technology does a lot of wonders for us, but I think there are a lot of setbacks as well. Now, you're here the week before the Yortzeit, the first Yortzeit, and I can only imagine that it is a very, very, very difficult and tragic time for you, and a very complex time for you and your family. And in Israel, we've been going, as a people, not as through complex times where sometimes you don't know whether to laugh or cry, right? And when I watch the videos of Yona, as I have over the past few days, I mean, with all the tragedy, you just can't walk away without smiling. I mean, he was just unbelievable. I mean, he was happier, connected to all those things in the hospital than most people are, on a good day, right? So how do you do both at the same time? Meaning, how do you carry the good and deal with the bad?
We have to, in our heart, we have to find place for everything, and it's not like, are you happy or sad?
Right.
You're both.
Right.
It's okay to be both.
Both at the same time.
At the same time.
Right.
It's like the opposite of love is indifference.
Right.
So the opposite of having feelings is having no feelings. And when you have strong feelings, you're happy or you're sad. Those are strong feelings.
Right.
And you can have both at the same time.
Right.
And that's what we're we're trying to build those muscles
Right.
so that we can do that.
Yeah, I think I'm going to answer as a therapist. It's a process.
Right.
I don't think that we had any idea of the depth of pain and longing and actual physical pain for the loss of a child. I think if you look in all the, theory books about loss and bereavement, that is the number one hardest thing to do is the loss of a child, certainly at a young age. So I think that we are learning how to process catastrophic grief, how to live with catastrophic grief and not let it overcome you.
Right.
And that really is it's a process. You have to learn it. You have to experience it. You have to go to therapy. If I can put a plug in for therapy, how important therapy is for families and for siblings.
Therapy is good for anyone.
So I think that we're learning I don't think you're born
Right.
knowing how to do this, because I think the death of a young person is not a normal state of events. Certainly not, from our perspective, from this side.
Right.
From God's perspective, of course, there's a whole other, God
Right.
sees things that we don't see. From our perspective, it's very unnatural. And I think that as parents, you have to learn, how do you process this grief? And you have 5 other children. We have 7 grandchildren. How do you hold them in your heart with joy when your heart has an enormous hole?
Right. Okay. One of the biggest reason why I started this podcast is because I felt I travel a lot to America to speak in various communities and synagogues, and I felt that people, while they're giving and bringing things and their hearts and their davening and Tehillim and all that and Alamaylas, but I didn't think that, or I still don't think that people really know in detail what's going on here. And I think that sharing Yona's story could mean a lot for a lot of these people. I mean, we're here talking about him, but many of the people who are listening to this podcast were, 16 minutes in and they don't even know who he is, right? So let's start at the very beginning. Where are you from, David?
I'm from Skokie, Illinois.
Okay, and?
But and California. So.
And I grew up in Northern California, a small city called Fremont.
And how did you guys meet?
I had
The short version.
Yeah. No, I had just been in Israel, and I knew some
met
people
here
that
in
knew
Israel.
his sister. Yeah.
Okay. And so all your children were born in Israel?
No, so we had 3 children. We were in the States, and we made Aliyah. We knew we wanted to make Aliyah before the first one went to first grade. This was very important. And we both had wanted to make Aliyah. That was one of our sort of values as a couple. And then we had 3 more here.
Right. And you made Aliyah too?
To Ranana.
Right.
And it was a very nice place to start because everybody could speak English. But we knew we weren't going to stay. And very, very early on, I think we heard about Modin, and we drove out here in,
94. We made Aliyah at the end of August.
Right.
94. It was very hot. We came to Renana.
Right.
The air conditioning didn't work. and we heard ads about Modin.
Right.
We had heard about it before.
Right.
And by November, 31 years ago exactly, we bought on paper before there was a city.
November 94.
We bought our first place.
And you moved here when?
And we moved here in June of 97.
So you've been in Modi'in for 28 years. Is that right? Did I do the math right?
That's right, yeah.
That's more than Daniela Hellerstein, who's sitting over there, right?
Yeah.
Who also has been here for
it's nice. I mean, even coming down here to this area, I remember when I worked here as part of a startup that I joined.
Right.
There was nothing here. There was one building.
Right.
And we were one of the first high-tech companies in that building. And now you come here, and I saw the plans at the time for this area. I saw the plans before we bought for the whole city, and it's just heartwarming, to see, what's become of Modin in the last 28 years.
Right, and the fact of the matter is that Modi'in has paid a price in this war. I don't know what the exact number is.
37.
37, right. And Yona was born what year?
In
2001.
At Sharet Tzedek.
March.
At Sharet Tzedek.
Daled Nisan. Just a week before Pesach.
So now, before we get into the story of October 7th, why don't you tell me a little bit about Yona as a person before? Meaning, I wonder when I watch all these things about his heroism and all that, is that something you knew about and you just saw more of it, afterwards, or is it, or did you discover something new about him after October 7th? I mean, so if I were interviewing you on Friday, October 6th, 2023, about Yona, what would you have said?
That Yona never considered himself a hero. In other words, he wanted to do something mashmuti. It was something substantial in the army to serve the country, and that's part of how he grew up in Modin. It's like he's not just our kid as much as we. He grew up. It takes a whole city to make a and this is part of the the way that our kids have grown up in Modin, and he really. From Gan all the way through, he was in the institutions in Modin, and he had some of the same friends all the way through, that used that were with us through the good times and the bad times, and so he didn't consider himself a hero. If everybody called him a hero, he said no, that wasn't. But he was doing his job when he went. And it was important for him to be in. He really wanted to be in Duvdevan, and he was a fighter, and he trained as a lochem. And then everybody gets a special job as well, and he was selected to be the chovesh, to be the medic, the fighting medic for his group, and that was part of his. Who he was, that, on one side he's a fighter, and the other side he's very compassionate and saving lives. So it's this complex integration between those two different facets of his personality.
So Yona's a very easygoing child. He grew up, I remember we'd go into parent-teacher conferences and they would say, "Is Yona the youngest in your family?" They'd say, he has a lot of knowledge about a lot of things that kids his age don't know, because he sat at the table with all his siblings, and then came the in-law kids. So I think he grew up in a family with a lot of exposure to a lot of things. It's kind of funny. I think of all kids are all your children are special and you love them all. But Yona was the only one who would always call me, and he would text me. He couldn't always speak because he was in the army. He would say, "Ima, how you doing today? How's your day going?" And he really wanted to know. That was just kind of his sensitivity, like kind of what's going on with me. He would never tell me what he's doing or where he was, and that was okay. But he truly was interested. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing
I think
today?
I read, correct me if I'm wrong, that he wouldn't even go out with his friends because he wanted to be with you.
Right. That's what we learned from the Shiva.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
No. He would still go out with his friends
Afterwards.
Afterwards.
Of course, we would go to bed earlier. No, but he wouldn't. We didn't know that, and he had a lot of. I think he took the role as the youngest unmarried, child very seriously, and he would ask us to. We would go to do hikes with him, and he was like, "Let's go do stuff. Let's he'd come in the house," and that was just his personality. And I think one of the best things about Yona is Yona never had an enemy. There's just he's everybody's best friend.
Right.
And I remember somebody came to visit at the hospital, and there were many, many people that wanted to visit Yona. And I said, "Well, this guy came. He's texting me, and he says he's one of your best friends. I don't know the name, but I don't know my kid's friends." So I told him the name, and he smiled. And I said, "So do you want to see him?" He says, "I don't really know the kid." But Yona, in his gentleness, made this other person feel that he was his best friend. He gave him that feeling. And I think that's a beautiful thing to take away when we think about, what's Yona's legacy? How do we treat people? And Yona really, really treated everybody equally. He didn't feel that there were errors about anything. And he had every reason to be a very snobby kid. He's very good looking. He was very athletic. He was with all the cool kids. And he just wasn't like that. And that's a choice he made.
Now let's get to his army career. So if I'm not mistaken, in May 2023, he was injured. Could you tell us a little bit about that? Am I right about the date?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Janine
right. So they were in.
He was at Dovi's wedding.
He had gone to his friend's wedding the night before, whatever. And then that night they had a military thing. They had to go find terrorists. And we get a call in the middle of the night. All of a sudden, David's phone rings.
Why don't we just take a break here? Because, again, a lot of people don't know. What is Duvdevan? What do they do exactly?
So Duvdevan is part of the commando unit, which encompasses Egoz and Maglan. and they're small elite units. Each one has its different function. Duvduvan is in Judea and Samaria. That is their main place to be. So going into Tulkarm is a very common place for them to go.
Right.
They actually weren't in Tulkarm. They were near a village that was just beginning to become very radicalized. So they were going in looking for wanted terrorists to take them in, to bring them in for interrogation.
Yeah, I mean, basically, Duvduvan, if they get intelligence that there's a ticking bomb, they go and try and detonate that ticking bomb. Ticking bomb could be a terrorist or somebody who's planning a terrorist act. So they go in and they have like choreographed operations into cities. They know exactly where they're going, who's going where, and how to abduct and capture the terrorists.
So how is he injured? What
So
happened?
what happened was they were in very small alleyways, and while they're kind of leading the area, there's a lot of bombs are being thrown at, and there was a bomb that was thrown near Yona and exploded on the back of his legs. So he was very severely injured. So David gets a call. We get a call, and he said, "Some woman's calling me in the middle of the night. It's about 2 a.m. We're like, "What?" I'm like, "Why is a woman calling you at 2 a.m? What's going on?" And he couldn't hear. And then same number calls back, and it's Yona on the phone. He said, "Hi, I got hurt," something like that. And there's a little blood, and I'm going.
A little blood on my legs.
There's a little bit of blood on my legs, and I'm going to the hospital. David's like, "Okay." Or no, he says, "I'm going to Beilinson." And then David's like, "Okay," and hung up. I think you were probably just in shock. I'm like, "Get out of bed." And he's like, "Why?" And I said, "Because we're going to Beilinson." He said, "But he just said there's a little bit of blood." I said, they don't do that. Like, it's serious. You have to go. Because you don't think this is going to happen to you. Like, this is something that happens to other people. Your kid gets injured, right? Because your kids are in the Army all the time. We had other kids in the Army. Nobody who gets injured. Somebody else does, but it was us. So we raced to Beilinson, and he was seriously injured, and he was given a medical discharge after his injury. But they very much wanted him back because he's a good boy, a good soldier.
So I was at the Kurs Ksinim, the graduation ceremony for officers training course on last Thursday. My own son, became an officer, and the prime minister spoke, and he wanted to give a lesson to the soldiers. So he didn't talk about shooting, and he didn't talk about this, that, or the other thing. He talked about koach haratzon, the importance of koach haratzon, which I think in English is willpower. Yeah. So tell me about the willpower that it took for Yona after he was injured, because the prime minister was talking to these new officers about the willpower that exists in the Jewish people and in Tzahal. So Yona is a perfect example. Tell us about the willpower it took to get from where he got to be able to go back to the Army.
So he had physical therapy. So I said, let's go to physical therapy at his base. He went in once. And I said, "So when's your next appointment?" Because, we're very American. You have to do what you're told, right? So he says, "I'm not going back." I said, "What do you mean you're not going back?" He says, I can do it on my own. I'm a medic. And so he decided to take on his own rehab. And he learned to walk again, learned to run again.
And he's how old now?
He's 22 at that point.
22.
He really wanted to just get himself back. And he had a lot of conversations with a lot of friends and with us as to whether he should return. He had already done a year and a half at Malay Ephraim in Mechina. Right. I do want to say that his chavruta, Nati Eitan, was also killed in the war.
Right. By the way, that's a connection that we have because Nati Eitan was Hanan Fine, my son's very close friend, and my grandson is named Ma'ayan Netanel Fine after Nati.
Oh, wow.
So when I was watching those videos, and the Con 11 video that just came out, I saw a picture of Nati and Yona. Yeah,
very, very amazing soldier and friend. And he had done 2.5 years of his Army service, so he really did not need to go back. And he debated.
He didn't need to. If he went back, he could go back to something else.
A non-combat.
Have to go back
right. He could have gone to a non-combat.
Into the unit.
Right. But he really felt his duty, and I think that's something. I think if we're talking about people who make aliyah, you really do feel a sense of your duty here. We start something, we finish it. Right. Finish your 3 years, and we very much encouraged him to.
Right. So even though he was badly injured and he was in Duvduvan, he wasn't in the orchestra of Tzahal, right?
No.
Meaning not to put down the orchestra of Tzahal, but so you knew that he could get very badly injured again or killed.
Well,
we didn't really think about that.
I don't think we thought all that that far.
No, a soldier who hasn't been, but here he was. Right?
Actually, I think the opposite. I'm like, how does lightning strike twice?
Right.
But
he was the first one in Duvduvan to be injured for several years. So.
Yeah, so I don't think we were worried. I just thought it can't happen again.
So Again, I want to make sure I remember everything correctly, but if I am remembering correctly, October 7th, he went back to Duvdevan right before October 7th.
He went back the month before, so started training and doing all sorts of things. And we were in the States at the time, and we spoke to him on October 6th. We spoke to all the kids. We were in Chicago. David's father had been injured. He fell. He was in hospital, and our son, daughter-in-law, and 3 grandchildren were on shlichut in Skokie. So we decided to go there for the holiday because it was quiet, right? Everybody thought it was quiet here. And then Shabbat morning, I told David he should check his cell phone the 7th of October to see if the hospital wrote anything about his father, because they knew we weren't going to answer the phone.
So you had your phone on just because of the texts that would come from the hospital in Skokie.
Just in case.
Right, just in case. Right.
So he opens his phone. It must have been 7:38 in the morning, which is around, 4 o'clock here already.
Right.
And he sees a text from his sister who writes, Dad is okay, but it's terrible what's happening in Israel. So, of course, we open up and we see this unbelievable news. Now, people who live through this don't understand this jump. But we were seeing numbers of 200 dead, 100 hostages, terrorists everywhere, 250 terrorists here. And
so you turned on the TV?
We turned on our phones, and of course, we looked, and I immediately called the kids because I knew he was, at that point, they were in what's known as Gal Aleph. They were the first wave, his team, meaning that if there was anything, they would be the first ones to go.
Where was Yona on the morning of October 7th?
He was at the Duvdevan base in Mishra Adumim, outside of Ma'ale Adumim. And that's where they went. That's their base. They have the armored vehicles where they can go into Yosh for whatever they to take care of any ticking bombs. And so they got the news that things were going on. Actually, there was one of his teammates in the staff is from Kfar Aza, so he started to get all kinds of texts from residents from Kfar Aza, so they knew. So they started. They were packing up for something else, and they went down towards Sderot. So last we heard from our kids is that he was in Sderot. He was on his way to Sderot, and everything was okay. And then at some point they got the call to go into Kfar Aza, and they were the part of the first units that got to Kfar Aza at around 10:30.
10:30 Israeli time.
10:30 in the morning.
So things started at 6:28, 6:29, and
6:29,
10:30.
10:30.
So I was going to say, this is such an important point to share, I think, for people who don't really understand what happened that day. When Yona's team came, and they went in also with Matkal and Maglan, they all came in they were the first people to go in. That's 10:30. So people were in their safe rooms for 4 hours already. Many had been slaughtered, unfortunately. It was just a massacre there. And you have to understand that by the time they got there, they were 4 hours later, there was the first. So these civilians were left with no defenses other than their safe room door.
And there were terrorists still coming in because
they didn't
border
secure the gate.
They didn't secure the border. And there were terrorists that were terrorists. They were not just terrorists, residents from Gaza that were coming in, looting and going back, and it was just wide open.
And for our listeners, some of them who have never been to Israel, certainly never been to Kfar Aza, I was there probably 7 or 8 times on rabbinic missions, and you can't even begin to understand the wanton destruction, and just you really understand what monsters these people are when you see what happened there. Mm-hmm. So there's sort of 2 stories going on at the same time. What's happening with Yona on the ground at Kfar Aza, and what you guys in Chicago.
Right.
So we're checking our phone periodically through the day, kind of watching the news and just incredulous that this is really what's going on. And it must have been already Saturday night. It's a 2-day Chag in Skokie.
So it's Simchat Torah there.
Right. So I see on the parents' WhatsApp group of his team that his commanding officer, Ben Bernstein, and his very close friend, Amir Fisher, were killed. So then I called the kids again, and I said, okay, you know what? I don't know where they are, but you need to find Yona because some serious stuff is going on. And so then the hunt then became for Yona because nobody had heard from Yona. Now it's Saturday night in Chicago. It's already Sunday morning. It's 24 hours since the kids have heard from Yona. Last time they heard him was 9 a.m. on Shabbat morning in Sderot. So that's one scenario. So they're beginning to look. So a couple of things are happening at the same time in parallel. So we're in Chicago, and what happens is Yona is, and we don't have the answers as to how or why, is put on the list of soldiers who are killed. Now, our daughter-in-law, who we're at their place in Chicago, her father works in the Defense Department, and he sees that Yona is on the list.
Defense Department in Israel.
In Israel,
Right.
Yes,
Right.
sees that Yona is on the list of killed soldiers, and he understands that we're in Chicago, so they have to talk to the consulate there, bring out a team, and tell us that Yona's been killed. So
Because they can't tell anybody until
Right.
Right. So that's sort of one thing that's happening.
So
Now,
you didn't know yet that he was on that
we
list.
have no idea what's going
Right.
on. So, in addition to that, our kids are married kids who are living in Jerusalem, have friends who are commanding officers in Duvdevan, and they see Yona on the list. And they, of course, can't tell that Yona has been killed. So they tell them, go to the hospitals, go to Beilinson. A lot of injured soldiers went to Beilinson, went to Sheba, and see if you can find him. So our kids go to the hospital. They jump in the car and they drive there. It must be midday Sunday because they call us. It's Sunday morning. And they get to Sheba Hospital. They go around, and nobody knows him. There's no Teudah Zahut. There's no identifying numbers. There's no nothing. And they said, well, you can try to go into the ICU. There's a lot of anonymous soldiers there. So they start going, bed to bed to bed, and they get to one bed, and they see at the end it's Yona, because Yona had no facial. He had one bullet here between his skull and his skin, but his face was identifiable. So they found him there.
So until that moment, they thought he could have been dead.
We had no idea.
You had no idea.
Now,
right.
we wake up, and it's Sunday morning. We didn't really sleep so well. And I said to David, there's a car outside. Get ready. They're coming to tell us, because it's a religious neighborhood, and there's no cars there. It's second day Chag.
Right.
So
coming to tell you that he was killed.
Yes.
Right.
I was certain that that's what they were coming. And thankfully, our kids found him. And but in addition, there's a plan, to take out our granddaughters, because my daughter's father knows about this, and he sent the team, so they're going to take out the grandkids, and it's all set up. And then we get the call from my son-in-law that Yona's been injured, he's stable, and you need to get on a plane.
And you got on a plane when?
2 hours later, I was on a flight with all the Miluim Nakim. David stayed because his father's still in hospital, so he couldn't leave his father's side.
Right. But also, it couldn't get anything. There were no seats.
Right.
But by some fluke, we managed to get one seat for Hazel from JFK, and then I took off with her to the airport, and the kids helped us get a flight from O'Hare to JFK at that time.
Now, let's go back to what's happening in Kfar Aza on the ground. What do you know? I've seen some of the videos, I've read it all, but it would be better hearing it from you.
Yeah, they came into Kfar Aza.
Terrorists.
No,
Yona's team.
Yona's team
Right.
came into, and there was somebody from the resident Kitat Konenut. I don't.
Yeah,
the
First
security,
responders.
the security squad.
The local security, and they told them to go left. So they went left, and they went into this neighborhood. They heard that there were terrorists in the neighborhood, and they started going from house to house, rescuing residents who were in their safe rooms, and they started going dilugim, jumping from one house to the next. And the terrorists saw them jumping from the house to house, and they set up an ambush between the third and fourth house. So that's where that's where his friend Amir was killed when he went. Amir Fisher. And Ben Bernstein.
Ben Bernstein was the
Mefaked. And he got one bullet to his stomach, and he called out on the kesher, on the communication for help.
Right.
And at the time, Yona had already taken care of members from his unit that were injured.
Right.
And also civilians.
Just to keep the people, remind them that he was the chovesh.
He was the chovesh.
Right.
And then and he saw his Ben was screaming out for help. So he immediately ran out to get Ben and start dragging him to a safer place. And while he was dragging him, he was shot from 2 different areas. He was like the target of the ambush, and he took 13 bullets. Wow. 13 bullets, one to his head, one to his arm, one to his back, and the rest in his legs.
And just to tell everybody, if I remember correctly, there was like 20 Duvdevan guys and 200 terrorists or something like that?
Yeah, at
something
least,
like
if not
that.
more. Yeah.
So what does he do then?
So he He's a combat medic. He had experience from before.
So he has to do it to himself now.
So
under fire.
So he knew that he had to put the tourniquets on. He put tourniquets on both legs and his arm, and managed to crawl to safety into the house of Mishpachat Alon, whose son was in charge of the Kitat Konanut. So he was there, and what everyone told us was that he was cool, calm, and collective, and was giving out orders, maybe joking a bit. We know that he ate a banana in the house, and then they started to arrange a evacuation. And like 45 minutes later, the first car came and started to evacuate some of the wounded soldiers. They did not take Yona immediately.
Right.
We don't have a clear answer why they didn't take Yona immediately, but during that evacuation, an RPG was fired at the vehicle, and I don't know, they were not, they were under a lot of stress at that time, but I get, we don't understand the whole picture, but Yona, like 15 minutes later, was evacuated. And it was under fire. The fighting was going on. It went on for another 36 hours there, and they managed to get him out. But by the time they got him to Tzomit Tzad, where they were hoping to get a helicopter, there was another ambush at that intersection. So they brought him back to Kfar Aza to the gas station at the entrance to Kfar Aza, and then took him to Hodaya, which is Hodaya, the Tzomit Hodaya, which is like a 40-minute drive from there, and then they got him to an ambulance who brought him to a helicopter who brought him to Sheba. So by the time he got to Sheba, 4 hours had gone on, and Yona, as a medic, he knew that if he fell asleep, he was gone.
Right. So I was going to ask that about the koach haratzon. You said. He knew that he couldn't fall asleep because if he fell asleep, he would just be gone. He just willed himself.
He willed himself. He was counting. He just said he's got to stay awake. So he was counting, up and down. And then in the hospital, what was the story that he?
Right, when he woke up, when they first woke him up after his first sedated period, which was about 2.5 or 3 weeks, he kept counting. We're like, what? He's like, 1, 2, 3. So one, he was counting the bullets that were going into his body. He felt each bullet because he said each bullet that hit his body, each of the 13 felt exactly like the bomb that went off. So he was very, very aware of what was going on. But he was also using counting to stay awake so that he understood, as David said, that to fall asleep at this point would have been his immediate death. And when he got to Sheba, he actually spoke to the surgeons. He arrived very, very cognizant and knew what was going on. And he really wanted to live. This is the theme. If we talk about what is Yona's legacy, it's life, his passion and desire to live.
I saw some article about him. Oh no, it was by Chili Tropper. I saw it once, and Chili Tropper is a Chaver Knesset who met Yona and befriended him. And
he was in Duvdevan also. So there was just all from the get-go.
Right.
There was
so I saw the same article that he posted it on Facebook, and then on the Gush Etzion, Har Etzion website, it's called Ubacharta B'Chaim, You Shall Choose Life. Wow. Right. I want to just go back for a moment. We don't have a ton of time left, but you had mentioned about evacuating him on the helicopter. Again, if I understand correctly, and this sounds very complicated, so I don't want to say anything that's not true, but apparently there was an earlier helicopter and a later helicopter, and at least according to what I read, there is at least a possibility that whoever the Commander D was, or Major D, or I don't even remember who it was, but that they didn't send Yona on the first one because he thought that he didn't have as good of a chance to make it as the ones that they did send. So
that's part of the issue that we're trying to verify. But sometimes you go down these rat holes like in what if, and it doesn't get you anywhere. Right. So as much as it's a curiosity, and we want to find out what happened so that all the lessons are learned. we know that it's not going to bring Yona back. But if there's a possibility that the
help
lessons
others, right.
can help others,
Right.
then we're,
Right.
it needs to be done. So the lessons from what happened there still need to be learned in depth, as the lessons from the entire war still need to be learned.
Are you in touch with Ben and Amir's? Are their
Parents,
families?
Yes.
Yes. In fact, they came to the hospital.
Right.
Their parents came to the hospitals, and their girlfriends came to the hospital several times and had very nice visits with Yona. And
Matter of fact, before the end, it was in September before Yona became really ill, which we later understood to sort of be the beginning of the end. We had a Shabbat, and Amir's parents were there, and Ben's girlfriend was there, and Amir's girlfriend was there, and we just had this great afternoon with them. And they had horrific loss,
right.
and it was very important for them. And this is this Israeli thing: you just show up,
Right.
and they always just wanted to be with us. And I'll tell you, the first time that when Ben's parents met Yona for the first time, it was a very difficult meeting. And Yona said to his parents, "I'm so sorry that I couldn't save Ben,"
Right.
and he really, really meant that. He really felt that he really wanted to save him, and he really thought he could. And I think, again, this passion for life,
Right.
We're going to do whatever we can. And I think that's what so distinguishes us, from people who we fight, that we have such a kedushat Chaim.
Simchat Chaim, Yona,
Yes.
I think you
Yes.
called it that several
Yes.
times. And I want to talk a little bit about his 417 days in the hospital. So one of the nurses said, Ein derech acheret l'ta'er et Yona milvad kasam. Right, for those who don't understand Hebrew, right? There's only one word to use about Yona, and that's magical. I guess that's how you.
Yeah.
Is that a
Yeah.
good description?
I think it's just, when we stop and think, well, first of all, let me just say, to be in an ICU where there really aren't windows, you don't go outside for 417 days, in and of itself is an event.
Right.
And Yona never complained. Yona was just, what do we need to do today? Let's get on with the program. Yona had this incredible outlook of just wanting to be at rehab, which is whatever it takes. And he had oftentimes 2 operations a day, 2 sedations a day, plus physical therapy, occupational therapy. And Yona did everything he could to save his life.
I remember Dr. Mitch Schwaber, who lives in the neighborhood, and he spoke at the funeral. And I think it was him who said that, like, at the end, they got together, all the doctors, and to see if there was anything else. And they just couldn't understand how this boy lived for 417 days under those conditions.
Well, and nobody was willing to stop any treatment. Nobody, not one department head, and Sheba, we're talking about a very, very, very polished hospital and very, very bright doctors. Not one doctor is willing to say, even at this critical moment, which is the day before he died, no one was willing to say Yona's not going to pull through this, because Yona always pulled through.
Now, I watched one of the videos and I cry pretty easily, actually, about these things, but he was saying Birkat HaGomel, like the prayer that we say when we're saved from, I just couldn't, but when was that along this way?
That was at Hanukkah.
Hanukkah.
It was the first night of Hanukkah, I think.
The first night of it was
Yes.
the first
First night of
afternoon of Hanukkah. They had a whole ceremony in the shikum in the rehab hospital, and they brought in a live feed from the lobby outside of the ICU, and Yona lit the candles there and said the bracha, and also
He could barely talk, but
Right.
but yeah, and took the opportunity to say Birkat Gomel,
right.
because he was saved, and that whole period we were feeling like we were the lucky ones that he was alive, and we knew where he was, and we're going to get out of this. And we had a lot of belief that he was going to get out of this.
There was something, Hazel, that I found so moving, and something that you had said in terms of your brutal honesty, which was so refreshing when Libby had a baby, and you were talking about being unable to really be with her because you just had to be with Yona. And here, she's your daughter. She had your grandchild. Tell me more about that.
You think of childbirth as such a happy time. Right. But it was almost a torture, that I couldn't really be with Libby because we had to be with things surrounding Yona. And I remember saying to her husband, call me when it gets closer, like when it gets closer.
This is your son-in-law, right?
Right, my
Noam.
son-in-law, Noam, right? So
Dom, what's the last name?
Alush, also
Alush.
from Modi'in, Mishpachat Alush, yes. Which is a terrible thing. Here you are, here's one of my daughters giving birth, and what should a mother do? A mother should be there, but
Right, so just so people that understand, it's in the same hospital.
It's in the same hospital.
Room, right?
And yes, two different areas of the hospital, and where we stayed at Sheba Hospital for 417 days. We stayed in an area that was right between the two places. So you're just kind of shuttling between these places, and where do you put yourself? Your child who's giving, your daughter who's giving birth, and as a mother, well, it's not a greater moment to see your own daughter, to bring life into this world.
We came out of the hotel, and you went to the left, and I went to the. We didn't know. Would we go to the left or the right? We each went our separate. We each went to one direction in the hospital.
And the bris was in the hospital by Yona's bedside, correct?
Yes. No. We Sheba was amazing. Sheba said, well, first of all, I have to say that Libby and Noam did not. They could have decided to do the bris somewhere else.
Right.
It was. But of course, they were going to do it in the hospital because everybody wanted Yona there. And so the hospital really helped orchestrate everything. They closed off. It was after the Heart Institute had closed its doors at 3:00. They brought in musicians and food, and we invited who we wanted to. And the hospital staff came, and his doctors came, and Yona was there. And it was a very, very moving bris. And Yona said to the nurses before he went down, I want to get, I think it was the day before, he said, bring me my Shabbos shirt. Now, because in the hospital, you don't have any Shabbos clothes. So it was very, very important for him to wear a Shabbat shirt. Now, it's no easy feat because at any one time, Yona had at least 50 wires going in and out of his body. So to put on a button-down shirt was quite an act.
Feat.
But this is what they did. And this really was important to Yona. Yona wanted to show up to this bris. He's severely injured. He understands his life is at risk. But he was going to show up in a Shabbat shirt. And that's what he did.
Now, tell me a little bit more about the hospital stay, but under the context of Simchat Chaim, of the joy of life, taking a bite out of life. When I was watching these videos, I thought to myself that if I had a dictionary and I had to have Simchat HaChaim, the joy of life, I would put these videos there.
So I think there's definitely a lot. I want to say that there's a tremendous amount of anxiety and fear because of Yona's condition. At any moment, any blood tests could say, we're done.
Right.
And that's how we lived with that. And I think Yona understood that very well as a medic. He understood this. But basically, by about 3:00 every day, the majority of the events, the medical events, were done. He had his procedures. They had cleaned his wounds. They had brought in whatever para-medical professionals needed to see him. And it was basically the night staff that was coming in. And that's where his friends came in, his friends from Modi'in, who all grew up here and also did so much reserve duty. So they weren't always there, but when they could be there, they would show up.
One of them, Avi Samter, who is in our community and who sat in this chair shortly after Yona's funeral. So.
Yes. So they would show up, and we would have karaoke night, sushi night. All sorts of artists would come. Healy was amazing and brought whoever we want to come sing. Yona's very musical. He loves guitar. He plays guitar, plays the piano. So having music there was very, very important. Occasionally we would have speakers come in, but it was not a typical ICU room.
Right. I could see
and
that.
In addition, I also want to say that our kids were there. While a lot of the spouses were serving in reserve duty, and we have grandkids that my daughters had to go pick up as well. You're kind of
A lot of juggling.
And we were very obviously absent parents and grandparents because we were with Yona, but they took turns showing up, and it was together. Everybody fed off of Yona's Simchat Chaim.
I could go on for hours, but they charge by the hour here at DABRU, so we have to. That's a joke. We have to. I just want to end with two questions. David, you said something that I found also very, very profound, and I think very, very important for our lives. And you said this: "Kishehu hitorer b'pam harishona da'agti me'od ki chashashnu mepgia mochit, aval hu hitorer v'haya mamash itanu. Ani rotzeh sheyizachru mimenu et ha'havana she'anochachut shelanu hi lo muvenet meheleha." Right, that when you realize that our presence here on earth is not something we should take for granted. So could you expand on that a little more?
Yeah, no, there's a lot of things that we take for granted in our everyday life. And I think when we saw, when things are taken away, then we appreciate them more. So I remember, when he came out of coma, we didn't, he had a bullet in his temple, like between the skin and his skull. And, we didn't know if there was other damage, how he was going to come out of it. So that was like a hard moment, just to understand. And then I remember just in the davening his friends would come on Friday night, and he loved the singing of Kabbalat Shabbat, and we have Tov Lehodot Lashem. And just thinking about, like what a concept that is. We take it for granted. I mean, we don't even think what we're saying, a lot of times. But when we say Tov Lehodot Lashem, how much understanding you have to be able to thank Hashem, but also you have to have the mental capacity to understand that you can thank Hashem, that we have so many things to be thankful for. Yona's a kid who would never sit still. He had a free minute, he would go running to DABRU and back. He would always have a friend here and there. And for him to be in a situation where he couldn't even sit up in bed because of the wounds on his back, just things like there's so many little things that we just take for granted. And if we can just have some idea of awareness of them, it gives you a whole new perspective on your life and all of the things that we say brachot for. Starting with Modeh Ani in the morning.
To conclude, how would you like the world to remember Yona in a few words? And what's his legacy that not only nice words and all that, but something that we could all hold on to? And he kept, just so that people who don't know, he kept this nation spellbound, the entire country, left, right, religious, non-religious, men, women, for 417 days. That's a long time. So for those of us, you're going to commemorate his Yortzeit. What can we do in order to keep his memory and his legacy alive?
I think it's just this concept of biachad. What is it? Achnu Aravim Zeh Lezeh. What's the mission?
Kol Yisrael Aravim Zeh B'zeh. All of Israel is responsible one for another.
Yeah, I think that when you live in Israel, there really is that sense. There was a sense that Yona became other people's children, and people became very connected. And I think Yona allowed them, and Yona facilitated this biachad. It didn't matter, as you said, what your background was. Did you want to live your life? Did you want to do something fun? Did you want to daven with him? It didn't matter. It was this biachad. Yona was a very, very, very much a person who did things together with his friends, with his family, and I think that all of us being together is really what has helped Yona in those 417 days. And I think the hospital became a part of that too. I think the hospital, the roles, you go into hospitals and there's very high roles about walls about patients and whatnot. I think all that broke down because we really realized that Yona's fight was everybody's fight. Everybody who wanted to survive this war, thrive. Yona didn't survive; he thrived, and I think that's an important rallying point for all of us.
David,
it's kind of hard for me to encapsulate his life into one thing. But I think choosing life in all of these situations and valuing your life, that's the message that goes on. And we had an issue on his birthday, like how do we commemorate his birthday?
Right.
And
when's his birthday?
On Daled Nisan, end of March. And one of the things Yona wanted to do while he was hospitalized is he needed many units of blood while he was hospitalized, and he wanted to return some of that blood with Duvdevan, with his unit. And on his birthday, we were able to arrange a blood drive where our goal was 417 units of blood.
One for each day.
One for each day. And we were able to meet that with the help of Sheba and Magen David Adom. And we plan to continue to do that each year on his birthday. And that's his way of continuing to tell us, choose life. And
so if people wanted to be involved with that, how would they find that out?
Can be in touch with us.
Right.
MADA will start advertising very soon, but it will be at the end of March, and we're going to have a bigger goal this year.
Right.
Yeah, we had 7 stations last year. Hopefully this year we'll have more.
So again, the Bimlat Shana Shel Choser V'Gagua In Sofi La'uvenu Yona Sheba Brief Hashem Yikom Damo. So once again, there will be a evening of song and memories this coming Saturday night in the Yeshivat Lapid in Modi'in, and then the next day on Sunday, November 16th, in Aliyah Lekever at Har Herzl on 3:30, and then we didn't even talk about that, but on Friday there will be a dedication in the city of Modi'in of what we call a ma'alah, right? We don't really know how to say that in English, some kind of staircase, and that is going to take place on on Friday, the 14th, at what time?
10 a.m.
And you want to tell people where it is in case people want to come?
It's at the road between Modi'in and Re'ut, which is next to Masot Nuriya, where Yona went to grammar school, and not far from where he did the exercises for kosher kravi.
Right.
And he was also in Bnei Akiva, Madrid.
And Bnei Akiva, he spent
That's
many years.
Park HaShchenut,
Yes.
right?
Park HaShchenut,
Right.
right.
Exactly.
Yeah, it goes up to Levi, like across from Levi 17.
I just want to conclude by saying that, again, you guys are amazing. You're an inspiration. It's very easy to see where Yona got a lot of what he had from you two amazing, humble, and just inspirational people. I want to thank you. This probably was not easy to come in right before the Yortzeit. And we should all choose life, and we could make the choice to do that every single day of our lives, every minute of our lives. And by all of us doing that, we could keep Yona's very special memory alive.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me on Defining Moments. Remember to subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else you get your podcasts, and leave a 5-star rating and a review. Please share this podcast with your friends who, like you, want to be inspired both by this period in Jewish and Israeli history and by the people who are making these defining moments happen. Let's not squander this unique opportunity. Maybe the next defining moment will be created by you or me. Until next time, I'm Rabbi David Fine.